A really good podcast, or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show. Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at minus 17 degrees with partly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. Senior Liberal officials will meet on Friday to set a date for the election of a new party leader. Just one detail that needs to be finalized as the Liberals begin the process of replacing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Michael Izenga is a former Liberal Party president.
In a traditional race, we would need 3 or 4 months at least, and the Constitution has some flexibility. This will be a direct vote of all members in each riding with a preferential ballot, so it's a complicated process, and the board will have to figure out, what they're able to deliver.
Also on Friday, the party will establish a leadership expense committee. It'll determine the expense limit for each campaign and the size of the deposit each candidate will have to pay to be part of the race. But the Conservative House leader says Canada needs an election ASAP. Andrew Scheer led the party in the 2019 federal election. He says parliamentary committees were scheduled to start considering a non-confidence motion in the Liberal government, but by suspending Parliament, Trudeau shut that down. Scheer says to avoid accountability.
Well, he's eliminated the functions of Parliament. He's shut down Parliament. He's put a close sign on the chamber, and he's shut down the committees that were going to do exactly what you're saying, litigating his record and coming up with recommendations on how to undo the damage of the Liberal government for the past 9 years.
Scheer says proroguing Parliament means 2 more months of uncertainty and puts Canada in a dangerous position when dealing with the U.S. and the incoming Trump administration. During a press conference moments ago, President-elect Donald Trump ruled out using military force, but said he was willing to use economic force to acquire Canadian territory. Also today, President Joe Biden gave Trudeau a glowing review, saying the world is better off because he was Prime Minister. Meanwhile, a trade expert doesn't think there will be a 25% tariff imposed on Canadian goods by the United States. Trump has said he will slap on the tariff unless Canada enhances border security. Barry Prentice is the director of the University of Manitoba's Transport Institute.
I don't believe for a minute that there's going to be across-the-board tariff increase in Canada of our trade with the U.S. It's just too disruptive to them and to us. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Prentice expects Trump to call off the tariffs across the board on all Canadian goods. He believes he'll say Canada has done what he asked. But Prentice says Trump may end up threatening strategic tariffs on other goods like aluminum or steel. In other news, the chief of a remote Manitoba First Nation wants its young people to be able to play hockey year-round. Red Sucker Lake First Nation is a flying community about 700 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. Construction on its arena started in 2018 with $5 million in federal money. Chief Samuel Knott says the work stalled when the contractors went over budget. Red Sucker Lake remains in a state of emergency since a youth suicide crisis was declared in 2022.
Important for our community to have our young people to get active, as we know that we are in a pandemic through drugs, alcohol, and also diabetes.
The community submitted a funding application last year. A federal government spokesperson says that application is under review. The Winnipeg Humane Society wants to get animals in northern communities vaccinated. It's working with rural and remote communities to prevent the spread of animal diseases. Society veterinarian Dr. Sarah Regier says it has a new program where community members are trained by vets to provide animal vaccinations.
There's a lot of wonderful people that are very passionate about the animals in their community and are there to help. So typically we work with those people that already sort of assist, and sometimes they're already involved in handling the dogs, in taking the dogs when we're doing our clinics.
Regier says the program will start with about 3 or 4 communities. Fort Lauderdale airport officials have found 2 bodies in the landing gear compartment of a plane. The remains were located in the wheel well of a JetBlue airliner, which arrived from New York last night. They were discovered during a routine inspection. And an operation is underway to free a cargo ship stuck in the St. Lawrence River since Christmas Eve. Lauren McCallum reports.
So far, it has taken 2 different unloading operations to remove about 3,000 tons of Canadian corn from the ship. It's all part of an effort to lighten the load, making it easier to free the vessel. Eric Esclamadon is with the Canadian Coast Guard. He says dislodging it is more tricky than one would think.
The ship is aground in clay, and if you ever walked on a clay beach with rain boots, you'll know that it creates a lot of suction. So there's more than just the grounding the vessel. There's all the suction from the clay that is in the ground that's also holding the vessel in place.
Esclamadon says the ship was registered in Cyprus and that the owner is covering the costs of the salvage operations. If it clears inspection, the crew and the cargo will make their way to Europe. Lauren McCallum, CBC News, Montreal.
For news anytime, you can head to cbc.ca/Manitoba. In Winnipeg, a chance of light snow today, a high around minus 15 degrees. Brandon, light snow at times, a high of minus 16. In Dauphin, a mix of sun and cloud, a high around minus 16. Flin Flon, you're seeing a few flurries with a high around minus 16. Thompson, looking for a high of minus 22 this afternoon with a few flurries. And in Churchill, sunshine for the most part, a high around minus 29. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to Radio Noon for January 7th. It's Tuesday out there. My name's Laurie Hoog-Stratton, and coming up on the program today, do you know or live with someone who has dementia? What questions do you have about how you can help them or help yourself cope? We want you to call us on our call-in conversation coming up at 12:35, 204-780-0893. And reaction from Manitoba's pork industry to a Liberal Party leadership race happening as the threat of a 25% U.S. tariff on Canadian imports looms. But first up, new regulations are bringing unsafe trucking companies to a screeching halt. Have you heard of chameleon carriers? It's the term used for unsafe trucking companies that dodge the rules. When the company fails a safety test, it reinvents itself under a different name with the same stuff. But new provincial rules that went into effect on January 1st aim to make chameleon carriers extinct. To learn more about how that problem is being tackled, we've reached Aaron Dolinek. He is the Executive Director of the Manitoba Trucking Association. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So how have chameleon carriers flouted the provincial regulations up until now?
Well, basically, what happens is a company gets in trouble. They have poor safety performance. They have something called a carrier profile. And what it does is it looks up violations roadside, out of service, inspections, as well as accidents. And it comes together, and when they have what's considered a conditional or unsatisfactory carrier profile, it limits how they can operate as a trucking company. Mm-hmm. It can hurt their ability to take on new customers because they look at their safety performance and don't necessarily want to do work with those companies. So what they have been doing in Manitoba as well as other provinces is shutting down those operations, starting up again under a slightly different name or a different name with the same equipment, the same people. Basically the same operation with a different name to continue business like nothing ever happened.
And how have they been getting away with it?
Well, it's hard to trace, right? Quite frankly, if you shut down one corporation, register another, unless somebody's really looking for that, it's hard to trace. So the province has realized that this is something they need to track, and as such, they've made this new legislation to help improve their ability to track these activities.
So what's been the effect of these chameleon carriers on the trucking industry? And I'm thinking, of course, safety, but also reputation.
It's hurting both. And I would say what we've been seeing is a theme of, I would say, what is the word I should use? They're cutting corners is a competitive advantage, right? Whether it be on labor, whether it be on immigration abuse, or actual safety, road safety programming within a company. And that non-compliance is a competitive advantage, and they undercut legitimate companies. So right now, our industry is in a tough position. We're in what's called a freight recession. Since the pandemic, we've seen freight volumes fall as well as rates fall. And, it's really challenging right now for legitimate companies that care about the safety of their employees and the public to compete with these companies that, turn a blind eye to it at all costs.
So tell me a bit about the new regulations. How will they be effective? What are they doing?
Well, I'll say a common way for chameleon carriers to operate is when they get in trouble with one entity, they now register a company in the name of a close family relative, right? Oh, it's a different company. It's my brother, it's my mother, it's my father, whoever it is, right? And they continue operating. So it gives the province the powers to look into these relatives and make those connections between close relatives. It also gives the province the ability of tracking equipment. So if, one company gets shut down or closes operation, and then all of a sudden, let's say 20 trucks and 40 trailers move to another entity, well, they can investigate that further and draw that connection.
So do you think these new regulations go far enough?
I think it's a good start here in Manitoba. I would say that the biggest challenge we have right now, what we've seen here specifically in Manitoba recently, is companies that get into trouble for poor safety performance shut down in Manitoba and go to other provinces such as Alberta, pop up there and try to go undetected. My understanding is the provinces are working to close those loopholes, but it is important that we act on it fast because it's happening every day. And those companies that are not safe enough to operate in Manitoba are registering themselves in another province and still operating in Manitoba to the detriment of road safety.
In provinces that don't have these kind of regulations.
Exactly.
So is the problem just within the trucking industry, or is this chameleon thing more widespread?
My expertise is within the trucking industry, but from what I've heard, similar things do happen in other industries as well. I'm not going to finger point, but I'll let you ask those questions.
Well, I have another question for you. Why don't the drivers and employees report chameleon companies? Or do they?
Well, I would say it's multifaceted. Our industry right now is struggling with what we call labor and immigration abuse. We've got companies that exploit new Canadians or those wanting to seek permanent residency here in Manitoba, and basically, threatening them and asking them to work in environments that, most people wouldn't work in, under threat, under the risk of, potentially not meeting permanent residency and so forth. So I think there is a connection to immigration abuse in this as well.
And what are you hearing from your members about these new regulations?
I think they think it's a good start. I've heard some say it doesn't go far enough. I think it is a great start, and there's more that we can do. And we're working with the province on finding creative solutions to these complex issues.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. It's an important topic that is top of mind for our industry right now.
I'm sure it is. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aaron Delinick is the Executive Director of the Manitoba Trucking Association.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens.
And how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
You are listening to Radio Noon at 89.3 FM, 990 AM. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten. Coming up on our call-in today, nearly 2/3 of Manitobans either know or live with someone who is living with dementia. What can you do to help? It's National Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and we'll have an expert with us to answer your questions. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. And coming up, with the threat of a 25% tariff hanging over Canadian imports, we'll hear what Manitoba's pork industry says should happen as the Liberal Party heads towards a leadership race. That's all coming up in the rest of the show. And to take a look at Riley's forecast today, mix of sun and clouds today, highs of minus 16, little breeze out of the south at 10. And on Wednesday, mainly cloudy, highs of minus 10. That sounds better. On Thursday, minus 3, but mainly cloudy with periods of light snow. And on Friday, clearing in the morning, mix of sun and clouds in the afternoon, and minus 9 degrees. Saturday and Sunday, well, Saturday minus 8, but by Sunday in the daytime it falls to minus 20. That seems a bit dire. And looking at some temperatures in Brandon at this hour, it's minus 16, Churchill minus 32, Dauphin and Thompson both minus 23, Gimli minus 18, Paws minus 20, and in Winnipeg it's minus 18. It is 16 minutes after 12 o'clock. Now that the federal Liberal Party is heading into a leadership race, Manitoba's industry leaders are weighing in on how that could impact relations with the U.S. Cam Dahl is the general manager of Manitoba Pork. He says the pork industry exports about 40% of what it produces to the United States. The CBC's Alana Cole asked for his reaction to news of a federal Liberal Party leadership race as the threat of a U.S. tariff looms.
I think it's really important that our federal government have a strong mandate going into discussions around things like the review of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, addressing some of the other big geopolitical issues and protectionist headwinds that we're facing around the world. So I think it's positive that whatever party will be in power, and I suspect we'll be having an election sooner rather than later, that that there is a strong mandate to negotiate on behalf of Canada. So I think that is a positive development that mandate renewal will occur.
So when you think about the threat of trade tariffs, what impact would that have on Manitoba pork?
Well, I think to start with, I think it's important to note that rising U.S. protectionism didn't happen on November 5th. This is something that we've been seeing happen and grow for some time. And there are quite a number of examples of protectionist measures in the U.S. So America First is not a Republican platform. It's something that's been happening in the U.S. for some time. And I really think that it's critical that we have a strategic plan in place for agriculture and food. It's not just pork. It's across the board. The United States is our biggest market, whether it's canola or wheat or oats or pork or beef. It is a absolutely critical market for us, and we need to have a strategic plan in place to reach out to our partners in the U.S. And, the events in Ottawa can't delay that. We need to have that work begin and continue now, and not be delayed by the events of Ottawa today.
Do you think that a leadership race could delay a strategic plan in dealing with how Canada handles the threat of these possible tariffs if they come to be when Trump takes office?
Well, we still have a government, we still have a cabinet, we still have ministers, and this needs to be at the very top of their list of the work that they're carrying out today. So I would hope that our federal Minister of Agriculture is going to take on this task and take on the job of ensuring that we have a plan in place. And it needs to include all the provinces, it needs to include farmers, it needs to include the industry. We need a comprehensive plan, and really that's the minister's job, and I call on him to do it.
Do you have concerns around the timing of a leadership race while these types of important negotiations are happening?
It's important that the government have a strong mandate to carry out these negotiations, and it's not just about the immediate, what happens on January 21st. We're going into a review of our most important trade agreement, that with the U.S. and Mexico. So it's critical that there be a strong mandate in place, and I think we'll come out of the leadership review, the new prime minister, probably an election. We'll come out of that on the other side with a strong mandate for the government.
How much of Manitoba pork goes to the U.S.?
That's a really good question. So Manitoba produces about 8 million pigs a year. 90% of that is exported, and it's either exported as pork packages coming from places like Brandon or Neepawa or Winkler, or as live pigs into the U.S. We send about 3 million pigs into the U.S. to be finished off and processed in the United States, and so the U.S. is our most important market for an industry that exports 90% of what we produce. So this is a critical question.
Right.
And to put that into context for Manitoba, that's a contribution to our GDP of $2.3 billion a year.
Cam Dahl is the general manager of Manitoba Pork. He spoke with the CBC's Alana Cole. You're listening to Radio Noon. It is 21 minutes after 12 o'clock. January is here, and with it comes a flurry of health-related New Year's resolutions. One popular trend we hear a lot about is detox diets and juice cleanses. But are they as beneficial as people claim, or are we being taken for a ride? Registered dietitian Celine Yan has taken a closer look at the science and myths of detox diets. She explains the thinking behind detox diets.
So a detox or cleanse is a diet or program that's often touted as ways to eliminate toxins from the body, promote weight loss, or enhance health. These programs may involve various approaches like fasting, drinking certain juices, eating only certain foods or supplements, or cleansing the colon with enemas or laxatives. These diets are often short-term and promote quick results. And the term detox can mean different things depending on the context. In conventional medicine, detoxification refers to the body's natural process of eliminating harmful substances like drugs or alcohol. Your liver, kidneys, lungs, and skin are all part of this built-in system, working constantly to eliminate waste. However, in the context of detox diets, the term is used much more loosely and there's no official definition. So this is partly what adds to the confusion of the purpose of these diets. They often claim to rid the body of vague toxins, but the problem is that most detox programs don't clearly define what these toxins are or how their diets actually remove them. There have only been a few small studies on detox programs in people, and the studies have been pretty low quality with study design problems and very few participants. There was a review in 2015 that concluded that there was just no compelling research to support the use of detox diets for weight management or eliminating toxins from the body. And then there was a 2017 review that said that juicing and detox diets can cause initial weight loss because of the low intake of calories, but that they tend to lead to weight gain once a person resumes a normal diet. And there have been no long-term studies on the effects of detox programs. They're marketed as a way to reset or cleanse the body, which can just feel appealing when we're looking to feel healthier. Plus, they often promise dramatic results like weight loss or increased energy, which again can feel really tempting if we're not feeling great in our bodies. Prolonged juice cleanses, for example, can lead to nutrient deficiencies, fatigue, blood sugar imbalances. They're especially risky for people with medical conditions like diabetes. And there have been cases of severe complications like electrolyte imbalances from excessive water intake or laxative abuse. And of course, there's also the psychological risks. So these diets can promote an unhealthy relationship with food by contributing to the cycles of deprivation, potentially leading to binge eating, and then all the guilt and shame that might come with that. So for folks who are feeling the lure of buying into a detox or cleanse program, first remember that detoxification is a very natural process that your body performs every day. So your liver, your kidneys, your skin are just constantly working to process and eliminate waste and toxins. We don't need special diets or products to detox. Instead, I encourage people to think about supporting their body's natural functions. So this can mean staying hydrated by drinking enough fluids because your kidneys need water to filter waste from the blood and excrete it in the urine. Eating high-fiber foods like vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains can support digestion and regular bowel movements, which is just another way that your body removes waste. So our bodies just need to be well-nourished to work properly. That means eating several well-balanced meals a day, not restricting intake to a few foods or juices.
Good to know. I'm still on the eating all the Christmas chocolate and cookies and stuff like that, my kind of detox. That's Celine Yan. She is a registered dietitian and CBC radio nutrition columnist. Oh, let's have a tune. Mallrat, musical project of Australian singer-songwriter Grace Shaw, and her latest single is a tribute to her little sister, who recently passed away. Shaw says the song's lyrics are about going home and how alone that makes her feel. This is Mallrat with Horses.
Drive past the station and it looks the same. I wonder how many faces have changed. And if I sat down on platform 2, could that bring back you? I'll sit by the window and save you a seat. Watch all the people and learn their routines. Today doesn't feel like a unit of time. Can you wake me up at the end of the line? Hey, I'm right here. I look different now. Do you remember? Hey, don't you see me? I look different now. Go by the racetrack to help with the horses. Pull me away with invisible forces. Got used to the drought, now get used to the flood. The river will swallow this whole city up. So I'm looking for pools and I'm climbing a fence. Can breaking these rules change this chain of events? I'm holding my breath and I won't let them help. Can somebody let me out of myself? Hey, I'm right here. I look different now. Do you remember? Hey, don't you see me? I look different now. Do you remember? Can somebody let me out of myself? 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 Can somebody let me out of myself?
Out of Australia, that was Mallrat with Horses. And you can find that tune on her upcoming album called Light Hit My Face Like a Straight Right. Interesting title. You're listening to Radio Noon. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten. And coming up after the 12:30 news, nearly 2/3 of Manitobans either know or live with someone living with dementia. What can you do to help, or what do you need to help cope? It's National Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and we'll have an expert with us to answer your questions. Today, our guest is Erin Crawford. She's the CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba. But we want to hear from you, 204-780-0893, or you can text us, 204-588-7355, and call us with your experiences, your questions, your comments after the 12:30 news. And the news is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at minus 17 degrees with mainly cloudy skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. A patient died in the waiting room of a Winnipeg emergency department. The CBC's Ian Fraze has been looking into what happened and following the story. He has the latest.
Health Sciences Centre is investigating the death. It happened this morning in the waiting room at HSC's emergency department. A shared health spokesperson could only tell us that the death is being investigated, but more details are expected later today. At this point, we haven't been able to confirm any other details about the patient, including how long they spent in the waiting room. The wait time at HSC, as of 10 a.m. today, was more than 8 hours. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In case you missed it, today U.S. President-elect Donald Trump again threatened Canada.
We are not treated well, as you know, by Canada.
Trump repeated his promise to bring in new tariffs against Canada, but he didn't stop there. He also repeated his desire to get rid of the border separating our two countries. He ruled out using military force to annex our country, but said the U.S. could use economic force to do it.
We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada?
Trump also has his sights on Greenland and the Panama Canal and said military force could be used to get them. Meta has announced sweeping changes to how it moderates content on Facebook and Instagram. Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg says the company will stop using independent fact checkers. Instead, it'll leave policing accuracy of its posts up to users.
We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the U.S.
Zuckerberg says the changes will allow Meta to get back to its roots around free expression. For now, the new policy only applies to the United States. Earlier today, during that same press conference where he threatened Canada, Trump said Meta's decision to end its fact-checking program is most likely in response to his past threats against the company. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
Let's take a look at Riley's forecast for today. Clouds building in overnight in the south with periods of snow overnight, Wednesday into Thursday. Very cold along the Hudson Bay coast again today. Yeah, it's minus 32 in Churchill right now. That is, oh, wow. Anyway, in the Winnipeg area, minus 16. And, oh, wait, the real weather person has arrived. I welcome weather specialist Riley Lachuk into the studio. Oh, I already took care of it.
Okay,
no.
I can go home now.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
we'll
great.
just switch. Okay. Nice to see you, Riley.
Yeah, so we're looking at another day where we're looking at below seasonal temperatures for this time of the year. In Winnipeg, looking at a high today around maybe minus 16 this afternoon. I think we can get there this afternoon. I know we've been hanging around. We didn't get as cold last night here in Winnipeg just because we were kind of stuck under this cloud blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Skiff of snow overnight last night across the south. Not totally unexpected, but certainly probably a bit of a surprise for some through the overnight hours. Looking at some very cold temperatures through parts of northern Manitoba once again as we get into the day today. Temperatures barely cracking minus 30 for parts of northern Manitoba. For places like Churchill, Gillam, Shamattawa, looking at low minus 20s, minus 30s. Wind chill factor close to minus 45 through parts of the north today. So this is frostbite on exposed skin. in minutes. Temperatures like these.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds really across the province throughout the afternoon today. We will start to see a bit of cloud building in as we get into the day on Wednesday. Really through the overnight period tonight is when we start to see that cloud starting to fill in a little bit. This is ahead of an area of low pressure that will bring us a little bit of snow as we get through late Wednesday into Thursday. This will bring us into parts of West Mountain to 2 centimeters, not out of the question, but certainly could pick up a dusting as we get through into Thursday. Still looking at a few periods of light snow lingering. So as I was talking, I mean, a couple centimeters not out of the question, but certainly I think we're looking at a fairly widespread dusting by the time we get to this time Thursday across southern Manitoba. Very quickly, temperatures today, minus 16 for Winnipeg, minus 15 for Brandon. Thompson looking at minus 19 this afternoon. And then we're looking at some snow for Thursday. Friday clears out. We get to a mix of sun and cloud, minus 9, minus 8 with some light snow for Saturday again. And then our temperature falls from minus 8 Saturday, minus 15 overnight into Sunday morning, and then minus 20 by the time we get to the afternoon. So,
whoa.
Yeah, we're heading back into the deep freeze for the late weekend, but we will get some above seasonal temperatures to close out the week here.
Good. Yeah, I see that. Thursday -3, you're saying? In
Yeah,
the daytime?
Thursday -3.
Okay.
That's not a typo. A little bit of a reprieve
Yeah.
from the deep freeze we've been in, but we will get back into the colder temperatures once we get into the weekend early next week.
Bound to happen. Thanks,
Yeah,
Riley.
you're welcome.
That's weather specialist Riley Lachuk, and you can hear him this afternoon on Up to Speed between 3 and 6, and see him on television on CBC News at 6. It is just coming up to 24 minutes before 1 o'clock. You're listening to Radio Noon, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. I'm Lori Hoogstraten. Well, this month marks National Alzheimer's Awareness Month. More than 20,000 Manitobans have either Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. 9 Manitobans will be diagnosed with dementia each day, and nearly 2/3 of Manitobans have personal experience with a friend or family member living with dementia. How can we reduce our risk of Alzheimer and dementias? Erin Crawford is the CEO of the Alzheimer's Society in Manitoba. She's with us today in studio, and we want to hear from you. What experience do you have with a friend or family member living with Alzheimer or dementia? What questions do you have for our guest around the diseases themselves or treatment or resources? Give us a call at 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. And I welcome Erin to the studio. Hello.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let's start at the very beginning. What is dementia?
Yeah, dementia is an umbrella term for a group of neurological diseases. So Alzheimer's disease would be the one that probably most people are more familiar with, but there are a number of them. There's frontotemporal, there's Lewy body dementia, mild cognitive impairment. But essentially what it is a group of diseases that impact your cognitive functioning, fundamentally is what it is.
And how is Alzheimer's disease distinct from other forms of dementia, or is it? We seem to hear about it the most.
It's because it's by far the most common.
Okay.
But they all have slightly different causes. They all have the most important part, I think, for families and listeners to know is really that they all manifest a little bit differently. So the thing that we are most probably familiar with, anybody listening would probably think memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly that's very much associated with dementia and in particular with Alzheimer's disease. But there are all kinds of other things that can, little unwelcome visitors that can show up with different types of dementia. And it can be things like disorientation or judgment errors. It can be communication and behavior issues that come up. Ultimately, dementia, all types, are a progressive and terminal disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things that we see change over time, but they all are pretty challenging for families to face, or if you're the one diagnosed, for you to face.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a tough disease, and we really want to use this opportunity to speak to those families and anybody who might be diagnosed this year and say, you don't have to do it alone.
And of course, with an aging population, the numbers are likely to go up. Give us a call if you'd like to join this conversation, 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. And let's go straight to the phone lines. I've got lots of questions for Erin, but I'm sure our listeners do too. Hello, Teresa.
Hi.
Hi. What would you like to talk about?
My husband had Lewy body disease. It was a long 5 years, and it took me a long time to realize. My friends noticed before I did. I guess when you live with somebody that close, you don't see the little things. But it was he was at home. He never ended up in a personal care home. I had him at home the whole time, but I had lots of people involved. I had a personal trainer come in. I had friends go take him for rides, play games with him. He himself, I don't think, ever realized how, what difficult the situation was.
Yeah.
But I also leaned a lot on the Alzheimer's Society. They provided very good support. The person kept telling me, it's not your husband. It's the disease that gives you these very difficult times.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky. I had the support of my family, and but it's a tough road.
I'm so sorry, Teresa, I think was your name. I'm so sorry to hear that. And
but I think, there's always progress being made, and we have to take the advantages that we have, with support from our people, from the Alzheimer's Society. It's very, very important. It was a tough road, but I was glad to have my husband at home as long as I could.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about too is really, we see that if you don't have a community around you, even when you do, the way you're describing, it's so difficult and it's so heartbreaking day in and day out for families. And if we don't have those supports from family or friends or neighbors, or the Alzheimer's side, we're always here to help, but it really does take a lot. And even when you have a lot, it's still really hard.
Went to the different Minds in Motions. I took advantage of the programs that were available.
Yay, you. I'm glad to hear that, because there's not enough there. And so I'm so happy when I hear that people are taking advantage of what there is.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you very much for getting the conversation started and for your valuable insights. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
You're listening to Radio Noon, and we are talking about dementia. It is National Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and our guest today is Erin Crawford, CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba. Do give us a call, 204-780-0893. Now, Teresa mentioned that she relied on the Alzheimer's Society. What kind of help do you provide?
We try to provide a whole range. So the first thing when you call us is just sort of really general, really like, what is this? What kinds of decisions are you going to be looking at down the road? Because most people, the same questions, what is dementia? I think I got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Is that the same thing as dementia? What is this going to mean? What's going to happen next? So we really try to sort of light that path forward so that you don't have to figure out everything that's going to come next. We can help you see that. But then as you go through that, to also offer some of those other pieces around who are your local experts, bringing in people who can talk to you about what on earth is the paneling process? What is home care? How do I get these things? Am I going to need them? What is a power of attorney? But then also some of the fun stuff. So she mentioned our Minds in Motion program. And then so that's really a gentle exercise program that's geared towards people who have some dementia and mobility issues. Along with, we play games and we have snacks, and it's just an opportunity to really get to connect with other people where you can trust that the people in the room with you have some understanding of what dementia is. They get what you're going through. And I think one of the things that we see a lot is that there's still a real stigma attached to dementia. And so many families, and so kudos to Teresa again, many families, I think, are reluctant to step out and say, this is impacting my family, we've got this. But when you can go to something like Minds in Motion, where you can exercise and you can visit and you can chat and you can eat snacks and you don't have to worry about it, it is such a breath of fresh air. And so we try to really offer both that deep counseling piece, that education piece, and the fun stuff so that you've got the whole wrap around.
Well, let's return to the phone lines. We've got several people on the line, and you can join in too, 204-780-0893, and let us know what you've experienced or what your questions and comments are. We have Margaret on the line. Hi, Margaret. Hello. Hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Hi. What's your comment?
I'll tell you my comment. I actually have so much I could say, but I'll try to be as succinctly and to the point as possible. My mother lived in her home all her life, my family home, up until her early 90s, and I lived in Vancouver, and so I just visited. But my sister lived in Winnipeg and noticed that she had the start of Alzheimer's. Or dementia, and she was put in a care home promptly by my sister. I found this out and was trying to do everything I can to get her out of this Rivera-owned care home that has a very bad reputation. And I did everything, and I spent my life savings on lawyers trying to get her out and get her back home, and was willing to move back to take care of her.
I'm so sorry that happened. Did you...
And I never was successful. I spent 3 years trying to do that, and in the meantime, was not allowed by the care home to see my mother ever.
Well, this is,
wasn't the
I'm going to stop you there, Margaret, because it sounds like you had a dreadful experience with the care home, but we want to stay a bit focused on the disease today. But thank you very much for calling. And
I will say, it's tricky.
It is.
Family dynamics come into, not everybody has the same vision of how they want care to happen as a disease progresses. And something like dementia really lays bare all of those different philosophies that a family might have. And especially when many families are in the situation where there's somebody living close to the person who has dementia and somebody living away. We've just come off a Christmas break. Many people will have just seen somebody for the first time. When you live away, you often see those changes in really stark contrast to the last time you see them.
Sure.
And that can be tough to navigate. And it is something that we try to help people with too.
Well, that's another aspect where getting in touch with your society might be very helpful. Let's return to the phone lines, and you can give us a call, 204-780-0893, with any comments or stories of your experience with dementia. Let's go to Luella. Hi, Luella. Luella, are you there? Oh, I don't think. Is she there? I hear something. No, I guess not. Luella, if you were there and you got cut off, please give us a call back, 204-780-0893. Going back to Teresa, she mentioned that it was her friends who noticed the changes in her husband long before she did. What are some signs that we might watch out for, either for loved ones or for ourselves when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's?
Yeah, it often, so a lot of people worry about that, right? Like I walked into the kitchen and I don't know why I've come to the kitchen, and 10 minutes later I'm like, oh, right, I went to the kitchen because I wanted this thing. Does that mean I have dementia? And it's not so clear cut always. But what we will often say to people is, if it comes to a point where it's starting to affect your daily life, then this is something that you should have a conversation with, or anytime you're concerned about a change, this is something you should have a conversation with your family doctor, whoever your primary care provider is. So if, for example, you go to the mall and you can't remember where you parked your car, because that happens to probably all of us all the time, that's probably not a symptom of dementia. But if you go and get on the bus and forget that you had brought your car to the mall, for example, that sort of thing is something that is more worrying. So where there's a departure from sort of what your norm might be. Anything that, and I don't mean to be super colloquial here, but anything that kind of raises that spidey sense, you know, that worried me a little bit.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things we should be talking to our doctors about. But often it is little communication changes, trouble finding words. It can be repeating questions. So those sorts of things, little errors in judgment, get disorientation. Somebody perhaps walks into the neighbor's house, for example, and they don't ever walk into the neighbor's house. Well, that's strange that they did that. Little strange behaviors. Watch out for those sorts of things.
And I know, Erin, as part of your campaign to raise awareness about Alzheimer's and dementia, you're sharing some personal stories. Can you tell us one or two of those stories that are you're highlighting in your campaigns?
We have just the best people connected to us, and we're so fortunate because they go through really, really tough things and then are still willing, despite that, to share their stories. One of the people that we're highlighting right now is Gary, whose wife has dementia, and it's actually one of those stories that he's got an example of how he first knew that there was something wrong with his wife. Was he came home and found her cooking bacon, but not on a frying pan, just straight on the stove, right? So I think that that illustrates that little disconnect that happens that makes you go, oh, there's something going on here. But he and his wife and his family have and continue to navigate providing support for her just beautifully. But it is incredibly challenging for anybody. And they've connected into the Alzheimer's Society, so I know that they've been able to access all of the supports that there are. And I think he is the reason he's sharing his story, because it is personal, is because he sees how hard it is for other people and the benefit that there is if you get support.
Sure.
So we very much appreciate all of our spokespeople who agree to put their name out for this.
And if you have a story to share or a comment, we still have a few minutes left. Do give us a call at 204-780-0893 if you have a question or comment for Erin, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. So how much progress has been made in recent years in terms of treatment or even possible cures? Are there drugs?
It's such
big
a
topic.
Yeah, on the one hand, not enough. There has been, in terms of things that have radically shifted the landscape in dementia in the last 20 or 30 years, there are very few. The reality of a dementia diagnosis in some ways isn't that different than what it was many, many years ago. On the other hand, we are, I think, on the cusp of some really big changes. We have a couple things. We have a much better understanding of what kinds of things reduce our risk of dementia. Things like being social, going out for coffee with your girlfriends and playing crossword puzzles and hearing loss, that those things are affecting your likelihood of developing dementia. We never used to know that. So that's important. I think on the treatment front, there have been a couple of new treatments in the last couple of years that have come onto the market that maybe now aren't showing as much promise as initially it was thought. But what I understand from the research community is that it's like a snowball. Research builds on research. And so just developing a treatment, even if it doesn't end up having the promise you thought it did, there's work going on and there's activity happening and it is going to build. And that is what you need in order to get to the place we want, which is ultimately there are effective treatments available for all types of dementia.
Well, and we were saying this, statistics show the number of people living with Alzheimer's or dementia could triple by 2050. And you've touched on it. Can you get into a bit more about how we can slow that pace or prepare for it?
Yeah, I think so. The biggest risk factor in developing dementia yourself, and the reason why I think double is usually what we say by 2050, the number of people with dementia. So either as a population or individually. Aging is the biggest factor. So there's nothing that any of us can do about that. but we can stay active and engaged. So all of the typical things that we're all sick of hearing about, eat a healthy diet and don't drink and don't smoke and exercise and maintain a healthy weight. All of those are true here too. And really, those are things we control. And even though we may not, but it's January, right? Everybody's in the mood to do those things. So do them, and do them not just for your heart, but for your brain health too. But some funner things. So staying socially connected, whatever that means for you, it really actually has a protective effect against developing different types of dementia. So it is important to continue to prioritize whether that's playing bridge, whether that's going golfing every Saturday. Those things actually are really important. And taking care of your hearing, we're not totally sure what the connection is, but there is a connection, it seems, between hearing loss and dementia. So making sure that you are going and getting your hearing tested and wearing those hearing aids. I know there's still, some people don't like them, understandably, but it is something that can help you reduce your risk.
And is there a genetic component to dementia?
There can be. So for some types of dementia, there's a genetic component. For the vast majority of dementias, there's not. And this kind of goes into that category of we know some things about dementia, and we don't know quite enough to give people all of the answers they'd like to have. It is possible to get genetic testing to see if you have a predisposition to dementia, and that would be something you'd ask your family doctor if you might get a referral for genetic testing. But the vast majority of dementias are not genetic. Just because your parents are diagnosed does not mean you are going to be diagnosed.
And I wonder how there seems to be so many people with it and so many being diagnosed, and we have the aging population. And is that because people live longer and you're more likely to live long enough to have dementia when in previous generations you might not have?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as we age, our likelihood of developing dementia increases significantly, and so we are living longer, and we're living longer, healthier. But that's what we want, is to live long, healthy lives, right? So we want to make sure that we have the highest quality of life. We want to push that dementia diagnosis down the road, if it's coming, kick it down the road as far as you possibly can, and then live as high a quality of life as you can with as many activities and supports if you do have a diagnosis. And then we always hope that those care supports are in place and adequate, which we know isn't always the case.
Well, you've been very informative and very interesting conversation. Thank you very much, Erin, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Erin Crawford is the CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon. It's just a couple minutes before 1 o'clock, and guest host Chloe Friesen has joined us in studio. Chloe is hosting Up to Speed this afternoon. Hi, Chloe.
Hi, Lori. How do you feel about musicals? Do you enjoy a good musical now and then?
Yes, I do.
Perfect answer. So we're going to be talking about a musical coming out from the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre.
Oh.
And it has to do with butter, sugar, and flour.
Like it already.
I know. Here we go. So they're serving up their first show of 2025. We're going to get a taste of the production of Waitress from the show director. This show is one of my personal favorites. So I'm very excited to nerd out about Waitress and listen to some of the songs. I've been listening to them all morning, and it has to do with pie. So it's going to be good nonetheless.
God, you just can't go wrong with
Can't go wrong with pie.
All right. Well, nerd out with Chloe this afternoon on Up to Speed, and have your cake and eat it too, and all those things. Thanks, Chloe. That's Chloe Friesen. She is a guest hosting on Up to Speed between 3 and 6 this afternoon. Well, it's been lovely being with you on Radio Noon on this chilly January day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.